He was invisible, just one among billion. Until he met her, an intergalactic fugitive hiding in a paradise forgotten by mankind, carrying a secret the Galactic King wants to keep hidden. Now, Ethan is a target, hunted by an entire empire. But what was her crime? And what is the king trying to hide, or maybe accomplish? The galaxy holds many secrets, and I'm going to show you all of them.
For all of his life, Ethan had been in the background. He was the kind of man that people forgot about in the middle of a talk, the coworker that wasn't noticed in meetings, the thread that ran through everything. Nobody really saw him, and he was okay with that for a long time. Maybe he was never meant to be seen, but he always felt like something was missing in his heart. It was like he was hungry for something more, but he couldn't put his finger on it. He came here because he was hungry. He was no longer in the city where people talked about nothing and life was too boring. His only goal was to get away, not where he was going. The wild called to him like a voice on the wind, telling him it would give him peace and something deeper, more real. He spent days wandering through mountains and deep valleys, letting nature take him in. The silence helped him feel better in ways he hadn't expected. Then he found it. The water in the pond was as still as glass, reflecting a sky that looked too blue to be real. Time had not changed it. It was tucked away like a secret that was never meant to be revealed. He moved closer because he felt drawn to it for no apparent reason. His heart was beating in a pace that wasn't his own. That's when he saw her. She came up out of the water like a dream that wasn't supposed to happen. Her body was smooth and shiny in the sun. She had a light green tint to her skin, and little pieces of dripping lace wrapped around her curves and stuck to her like second skin. But it was her deep, old, knowing eyes that held him captive. Without a word, they took everything off of him and broke him down. She moved before he could breathe. In an instant, the knife was at his throat. The blade was shining like liquid silver. Her face had gone from being ethereally interested to being sharp and dangerous. "You shouldn't be here." Her voice was alike and different at the same time, like music and a warning. Ethan didn't move and was barely able to breathe. Between killing him and not killing him, he could tell by the look in her eyes. She asked him questions that were cold and to the point, revealing more and more about his life. After what seemed like a very long time, she finally made her choice. She let him stay alive, but he wasn't able to leave. Ethan was stuck in her world because of things he couldn't change. He didn't want to risk revealing her, so she let him stay. He was an unwanted guest in the presence of something much bigger than he could understand. As the days went by, he learned to watch her and figure out the things she wouldn't tell him. She was the perfect puzzle because she knew too much about him but wouldn't say anything about herself. Still, there was a change. They felt a pull between them that they couldn't say out loud. Every look and every accidental touch of skin was tinged with stress. She was scary, but she was also fun to be around. He didn't want to leave as much as he learned, but when they were found, their sensitive lives were shattered. They came out of nowhere and surrounded them like dogs looking for blood. The mercenaries moved with practiced violence, and Elfin, their boss, stood in front of them like a ghost come to life. His skin was a creepy orange color, and as he pointed his blade at her, his almost human face twisted with pleasure. He told her, "You will be taken to court. You will answer for your crimes." 20 kids. That a prince was one of them. Ethan got a chill when he heard the name that came next. King Askeladd. It crushed him with its weight. Could it be that the woman he had grown to like and trust was a killer? She hit him before he could fully understand what had happened. She cut through their lines with deadly grace, like a storm that wouldn't stop. Elfin died, but more would come. She knew. Ethan knew it. She did the terrible thing before he could stop her. She took him with her. The earth shrunk behind them until it was just a tiny dot in the vast black hole of space. Reality broke up. He had been taken away from everything he knew. A white-hot anger boiled in his blood and would not stop. He yelled, "You're a killer, and now a kidnapper." But the truth was much worse than he thought. She hadn't killed those kids. She worked hard to keep them safe. King Askeladd planned to kill them as an offering to wake up Meldagor, a god of the universe who was sleeping in the abyss. Their blood would have made the thing obey his will, so he could not be stopped. She tried to stop the damage, but in the chaos they were all destroyed. The kids were killed. Askeladd was alive, and no one would ever forgive her. Why did she take him then? She had no idea. She couldn't leave him behind because of something about him. A choice she couldn't explain. There was no going back now. Ethan had to change. That's what she would do. He would be trained to become something that could live in this harsh universe. She showed him illegal ways to improve his health, galactic medicines that changed the way the body works. They had never been beaten by a person. But Ethan wasn't just any person. There was a quick and rough change. His muscles tensed up, and he felt like an old, unknown force was stirring inside him. His senses got stronger. His reactions got stronger. He changed into something else. Not the same. The war went on anyway. Royal guards, reward hunters, and an empire that wouldn't let them get away were some of the people they fought. But the most important fight they fought was the one inside themselves. The stress between them got too much to handle, and the fire between them burned. He hated her. He wished for her. She saved him and hurt him at the same time. Then one night, in the silence of space, she told the one truth she had always been afraid to say. "My name is Caddy." Then everything changed. That night was the first time she let him touch her without any boundaries, weapons, or fear. He was hers that night. She became his. But the war wasn't over yet. Something inside Ethan was starting to wake up, and things would never be the same again. It wasn't as quiet as it seemed in space. It looked dead and empty. But in fact, it was full of horrors that could not be seen, forces that were too strong for humans to understand. Now Ethan could feel it, like a weight was pressing against his chest as Caddy spoke. There was a quiet surrender in her voice. "The universe you thought you knew is an illusion," she said, her eyes wandering off into the faraway void. "You think of kings as rulers of men, empires as collections of planets. But Askeladd, he is more than a king. He is a force, a will that bends reality itself." As Ethan listened, a strange, cold fear crept into his bones. Caddy went on, "He wasn't always this way. Once, he was just another warlord fighting for dominance over dying worlds. But then he found the scripts, ancient inscriptions left behind by something older than time itself. They spoke of a being buried in the dark between galaxies. Meldagor, the sleeper, the devourer of light." Ethan got a chill just hearing the name. "He is not a god," Caddy said in a low voice. "Not in the way your people imagine. He is hunger-given form, a presence so vast that even the oldest empires feared to speak of him. He sleeps now, buried deep beneath the crust of a forgotten moon. But Askeladd sought him out, willing to pay any price to wield his power." Ethan made fists. "And the children?" Caddy's face got darker. "Their blood was the key, their souls a bridge. Askeladd's ritual would have woken Meldagor and bound him in servitude to the throne." She blew out quickly. "But I failed. And now the universe believes I am the one who spilled their blood." Ethan opened his mouth to tell her that this didn't make sense and that there had to be a way to fix things. Before he could say a word, the alarms went off. When the ship's proximity sensors went off, Caddy turned around and her eyes got really big. She rushed to the controls and looked over at the danger coming at her. "They found us," she whispered, her voice tense with worry. "Galrian mercenaries. Elfin is leading them." It was very rough on the ship as a blast hit its hull. There were warning lights flashing across the panel as the engine sputtered. Caddy clenched her teeth. "We won't outrun them." Ethan felt a rush of adrenaline go through him. "Then we fight." Caddy gave him a mean look, but she didn't say anything. She grabbed her weapons and threw a blade and a small plasma gun at him. "Stay close to me. If things go wrong." The ship shook and metal screeched as the mercenary ship's landing clamps locked onto them. "Too late," Ethan yelled. The battle began when the door burst open. The Galrian soldiers were cruel and they moved very quickly. No matter what Caddy had taught Ethan, he fought it. His body was responding faster than his mind could keep up. He was stronger and faster because of the galactic nutrients that were running through his veins. When he moved, it felt almost unnatural how quickly and precisely he cut through the enemy lines. Elfin then stepped forward. The head of the Galrians moved like a ghost, and his armor sparkled in the dim emergency lights. He was wider and taller than Ethan, and he had the intense presence of a fighter that made his blood scream with instinct. "You should have run, human," Elfin said in a low, sarcastic voice. "You have no place in this war." Ethan sped up. Elfin hit him hard, beating him down. When their blades hit each other, Ethan felt a sharp pain go up his arm. He hardly had time to notice how fast Elfin's response was coming when the mercenary hit him in the ribs with a knee that knocked him out. Ethan fell backwards, his chest hurting badly. Elfin didn't think twice. He moved in again and Ethan's barriers were quickly cut down by his blade. Ethan's gun flew away after a well-placed hit. The very next second, Elfin's sword was against his throat. Before Ethan could do anything, Elfin hit him in the stomach with his hand. He was filled with agony. He fell to his knees and gasped, his lips dripping with blood. Caddy went cold. Elfin smiled. "Surrender or I carve him open." Ethan coughed and tried to get up, but his body was too heavy. He lost. When Caddy looked at him, there was something raw and unreadable in her face. After that, she slowly put down her gun. She said in a steady voice, "I'll go with you. Just let him live." Elfin smiled and nodded, sending a message to his men. Two of them grabbed Caddy and put restraints on her wrists to stop her from using her enhanced powers. Ethan struggled, feeling angry and useless at the same time. No. His head was hit by a fist. He was eaten up by darkness. The world was different when Ethan woke up. His wrists were stung by the cold metal, and the weight of the chains hurt his skin. As he tried to concentrate, his eyes kept moving around and his head hurt from the blow. He was locked up. The air around him was heavy with sadness and sweat. He could hear whispers and faraway cries. A ship with slaves. Fear slashed at his throat. The chains pulled him back when he jerked forward. Where did she go? When he thought about it, his blood ran cold. Elfin had taken her. She was going to Askeladd, and he was going to be sold. The first thing Ethan felt when he woke up was that warmth. His muscles screamed in pain as he forced himself to stand up. He felt a deep, burning pain all over his body. He could feel the weight of being locked up on him like a vice as the chains shook against his wrists. The air was heavy with sadness and sweat. The barely lit cargo hold was lined with rows of cages holding broken beings from all over the galaxy. Some were humanoid, others were monsters, but all of them were broken in some way. When Ethan clenched his hands, he was filled with rage. He had been taken. He had been sold. He was still weak, but not as much. There was a difference. He could feel it, like it was throbbing under his skin and burning like fire in his blood. He could feel the power inside him that had been building up over time. It was no longer sleeping. Elfin's victory over him had changed him in some way. The space vitamins should have made him faster and stronger. They changed his writing instead. His cells changed to fit. His body had changed. He was no longer just a man. The heavy doors to the cargo hold slid open with a sudden clang that shook the ship. A huge person walked in, pulling a bloody slave by the collar. Its skin was thick and slate gray, and its huge arms were scarred from fights it had been in the past. Merelden. Ethan knew who he was because other inmates had talked about him. A person who sells slaves. A beast. He was so strong that it was hard to understand. He had ripped fighters apart with his bare hands and broken skulls like they were glass. Merelden looked at Ethan with his sharp, black eyes. "You, human." His voice was rough, like stone being ground. "You'll fetch a good price. Maybe I'll sell you to the pits. See if you last more than a few minutes before something rips your throat out." Ethan didn't move. Inside him, something had clicked into place. He wasn't scared anymore. Merelden moved toward them. "Nothing to say? I thought your kind always begged." Ethan let out a slow breath. The beat of his heart was steady, strong. He then moved. The chains that were around his wrists broke like glass. Before Merelden could do anything, Ethan sped forward faster than he had ever before. It was a shockwave that went through the air when his hand hit the slaver in the chest. Merelden's huge body was thrust off the ground and thrown backward, hitting the metal wall hard enough to dent it. There was silence for a short time. Then Merelden got up. He bared his teeth and wiped his mouth clean. "You'll regret that, human." Ethan didn't move. Merelden did a leap. As he charged, his huge arms swinging with deadly accuracy, throwing boxes and other things into the air. It looked like Ethan's body was made for this, because he moved so easily as he ducked. When Merelden's fist hit the floor where Ethan had been, it was like a hammer hitting it. If he had been the same person he was before, the force would have been enough to break his bones. He was different now, though. When Ethan sidestepped, he felt a rush of energy go through him. Then it took place. He became twice as strong. He could feel it, his bones getting stronger and his muscles getting tighter. His heart beat like a war drum, giving his body energy that was beyond what humans could handle. He turned around, but it was too late. Ethan hit. One hit. That was all it took. When his fist hit Merelden on the head, the slaver's head snapped back forcefully. The room was filled with the sound of bones breaking. Merelden stumbled and his body shook before he fell to the ground dead. Ethan stood over the body with steady hands and a steady breath. As Ethan caught his breath, he glanced down at his own hands. They were steady. Too steady. The rush of strength, the raw power coursing through him. Was this really him anymore? Or had he become something else? It's strange how power changes people. Sometimes it turns them into heroes, sometimes into monsters. And looking at Merelden's broken form, Ethan couldn't help but wonder, was he still himself, or was he becoming something unrecognizable? What do you think? If you were in Ethan's place, would you embrace this power no matter what it did to you? Or would you fear what you might become? Let me know in the comments. I need to know I'm not the only one thinking about this. The slaves just stood there and stared. Then it clicked. I knew. Someone said in a whisper, "He killed Merelden. The human, he's not normal." Ethan looked at them. He had a clear head, concentrated. He said, "We're leaving this place." The slaves didn't have much time to think before hope lit up in their eyes. Ethan moved quickly and broke the chains, freeing the prisoners one by one. Some of them were too weak to fight, but fighters and survivors got stronger when they saw their captor fall. They came up with guns and armor. The ship had been owned by people who bought slaves. After that, it was theirs. Ethan walked over Merelden's dead body and felt something deeper inside him beat. He was different now. As his cuts healed before they could bleed, he could feel his body getting better. He was faster and stronger. He felt like he was just getting started, and he looked out of the ship's window at the huge amount of space beyond it. Kitty was outside. He was going to find her. Power and greed made up the kingdom of Asklade. It was a machine built on fear and blood. Ethan had never seen anything like it. There were huge spires made of obsidian and steel, streets lined with banners with the sigil of the Galactic King, and soldiers in blackened armor walking through the halls of a society built on conquering. Through the Empire's barriers, he moved like a shadow and got away. He freed slaves who had ties to people on the edges of the Empire, like smugglers, rebels, and soldiers who would sell information for money. That's how he found out the truth. Kitty was going to pass away. 40 prisoners were going to be put to death in the Grand Plaza as a show to warn everyone in the galaxy that disobeying the throne was a death sentence. That wasn't the worst part though. They gave up something. Ethan put it all together. The kids were supposed to wake up Meldegor. Their souls were meant to power the right, which was a link between worlds. But now that they were dead, Askeladd needed more. Souls that are stronger. They are warriors, killers, and other creatures whose blood flows through them with fight. Increase the amount by 2. 40 lives. 40 strong beings were thrown into the abyss. As long as the process was finished, Meldegor would wake up, and everything would burn up. It had to stop Ethan. He stayed hidden for days, gathering information, learning guard habits by heart, and keeping an eye out for security holes. Even though the kingdom was very big, Ethan had changed into something other than a person. His body had changed, and his strength from the adrenaline made him faster than the elite warriors who patrolled the city. Then one night he got too close to the fire. Elfin was ready for him. The air changed as soon as Ethan stepped into the lower area. He knew what it was like to be chased and felt the weight of a predator nearby before he saw him. Then Elfin came out of the darkness. Always interesting, Elfin thought, his voice rough like steel against bone. I should have killed you when I had the chance. Ethan didn't move. He could feel the energy moving through him and his feelings were getting stronger. He didn't hit though. Not yet. Ethan spoke in a calm voice. You don't know what Askeladd is doing. He's not just executing prisoners. He's using them. Their deaths will feed something ancient, something that should never wake. Elfin laughed and tilted his head. And? Ethan made a face. You don't care? Elfin's smile got bigger. Why would I? I serve my king. His will is my will. If he seeks to claim the power of a god, then I will carve the path for him with my own 2 hands. Ethan let out a slow breath. There was no way to reason with him. That was good, because Ethan didn't want to talk to him. He wanted to get even. Elfin had broken him, had put him down, had laughed as he saw Caddy give up to save his life. That smile was making Ethan want to wipe it off his face. They just stood there and looked at each other for a long time. At that point, they moved in perfect time. The fight was like a storm in the lower neighborhood. The first person to attack was Elfin. His blade cut through the air with killer accuracy. When Ethan dodged, his reactions were so fast that they were beyond human ability. His body was acting on pure instinct. When Ethan and Elfin hit each other, the ground shook because of the force of their blows. Elfin moved quickly. Man should not go that fast. But now Ethan was different. Every time Elfin moved forward, Ethan changed to fit. Ethan learned from every move he made, from every attack to every dodge to every trick. He became faster, stronger, and better at what he did. The pain in his body made him move faster. Elfin growled, and his anger showed in his attacks. You've changed. Ethan smiled. You have no idea. After that, he took charge. His strikes never stopped. More quickly. It's worse. His strength came from a constant rush of energy that made all of his muscles work together perfectly. Elfin tried to fight back, but Ethan was too strong for him. The last move then came. Elfin charged at Ethan, his blade aimed for his neck, but Ethan was already on the move, turning his body to avoid the attack. He quickly and smoothly grabbed Elfin's wrist and yanked the sword away from him, and drove it right through his heart. Elfin let out a gasp and his eyes grew wide in shock. He fell backwards, his own blade stuck in his chest. Blood ran from his lips. With a mean grin on his face, Ethan leaned in. Not so fun when it happens to you, huh? Elfin almost choked on a laugh, but his face still had a nasty grin on it. He was crazy even after he died. Then he fell down. Ethan saw Elfin's life leave her body. He had won. There was no time to party though. He felt a chill go down his spine as a sudden, out of the blue pulse rippled through the air. The act had started. Ethan turned around and ran toward the Grand Plaza, his heart racing. He had to get rid of the animal. Caddy needed his help. Ethan could feel each second slip away like sand in a storm. There were troops in his way, but the Grand Plaza was close. Soldiers poured into the streets like a wave and blocked his way. They had their guns drawn and were told to stop him at all costs. They didn't have enough power to beat him. That was clear to him. They knew that. They didn't have to win though. They only had to make him move more slowly. When he moved, Ethan was like a natural force, cutting through groups of enemies with brutal speed. His hands broke bones, his blade cut through armor, and his speed broke their formations. But they came over and over again. His ribs were cut by a blade. He got hurt in the shoulder by a plasma shot. He was hit in the thigh again by another spear. He was in a lot of pain, but his body wouldn't give out. As soon as they were made, his scars healed themselves. His skin knitted back together before the pain could fully go away. He was now able to heal himself faster and better. His body changed to fit him. He stopped avoiding because of this. He ran away. He was hit in the stomach by a spear. He kept going. His wrist was broken by a hammer. He kept going. He was hit in the back by a sword. He kept going. The troops were scared because he wouldn't die. Then the platform for action showed up. Dozens of prisoners were hanging in the air, and their chains were rattling as they fought. Their feet were on top of a pit that opened up in the ground. It was a sharp abyss surrounded by obsidian spikes and glowing with a strange, pulsing energy. Ancient runes that lit up a sickly red were carved into the sides to make blood-draining devices. Their fate was about to happen. Askeladd, dressed in a deep red robe, stood in front of them with his hands raised in prayer. He chanted in a language that made the air shake, and his voice shook like thunder. The act had started. Ethan only had one chance. He put more force into the photon bomb he had taken from Elfin. He pulled the pin out of the hat right away and threw it straight at Askeladd. The blast sent out a blinding wave of energy that tore through the place where the execution was taking place. Guards were thrown around like rag dolls, and broken glass and other things flew all over the square. Ethan didn't wait around. As soon as the dust cleared, he charged at one of the guards who was running the sacrifice machine. The man was confused and shaking from the blast. He was grabbed by the collar, and Ethan pressed his blade against his throat. When Ethan growled, "Close the pit," his voice was low and dangerous. The guard paused, his eyes moving back and forth between Ethan and the ritual structure that was falling apart. Ethan put more pressure on. Now, the guard hit the emergency switch panel hard while shaking. The huge pit grumbled and its gears screeched as it shut. The prisoners' chains were lowered, and their bodies were pulled away from the dangerous drop. Ethan did not wait for thanks. He punched the guard so hard that he passed out and ran toward Caddy. She was choking and the chains were still around her body. When she looked into his, her eyes got bigger in shock. "You're still alive?" she asked in a whisper. "How?" Ethan smiled. "Bonus from the supplements." For a moment, Caddy just stared at him. Then she shook her head and smiled a little. "Of course, only you would turn a near-death experience into an upgrade." Then her face turned serious. "Ethan, we need to free the others. Now." Ethan frowned and looked at the prisoners who were still trying to break free from their chains. "They'll just slow us down." "No," Caddy said very clearly. "We'll need everyone." Ethan was unsure. "Why?" She looked straight ahead and her voice dropped. "Askeladd isn't just a man anymore. He's tapped into Meldagor's power. He's stronger than ever." Ethan's heart stopped beating. "You're saying he?" Caddy agreed. "He's changed into something else. And if we're going to stop him, we need all the help we can get." Ethan looked at the inmates. They were warriors, killers, and very strong beings, and their eyes were burning with anger and defiance. He asked, "Will they even fight?" Caddy's grin came back. "They don't run from a battle. And besides, they want vengeance too." Ethan smiled with his lips curled together. "All right, let's burn this place down." He broke the chains of the other prisoners with quick, accurate moves. They didn't waste any time. Some rushed for weapons while others took off the armor and gear of fallen guards. As the ragtag force came together, the mood changed and some of them went from being victims to killers. Then someone laughed. Low and dark sounds can be heard through the ruins of the execution site. Everyone looked at the center of the blast. Askeladd, the Galactic King, rose from the rubble. His red robes were torn and his body was twisted with black energy lines. His eyes were a strange shade of dark, and his smile was overflowing with laughter. He wasn't hurt by the blast. What it did was wake him up. It was Askeladd who said, "You are all so stupid." His voice was strong. He washed his hands and walked forward with an eerie ease. "Do you think I need a pit to sacrifice you?" The ritual was already near completion. He smiled bigger, and his pupils got bigger until they were empty black holes. "All that's left is the final offering." Ethan tensed up as he saw it, the black mist coming out of Askeladd's fingers and twisting into a solid shape. Weapons appeared out of the darkness, their blades jagged and black with corruption. He had shadowy strands that writhed like horrible snakes coming out of his back. The air around him was twisted and buzzing with an old, strange feeling. He was floating above the battlefield and looking down at them all like a ruler talking to bugs. Askeladd yelled, "You are worms in front of me." He held out his arms. "And once I carve you open, the universe shall know the power of chaos once more." Darkness wrapped around his body. The fight was about to start. Silence fell over the square like a heavy shadow. A strange silence, alive as if the very air was holding its breath. Askeladd floated above them all, his body surrounded by black, pulsing tentacles that moved in slow, threatening patterns. The dark daggers spun subtly in his hands as if they had a will of their own. His face, calm, wore a smile of pure pleasure. 40 warriors, the most brutal and lethal survivors the galaxy had to offer, surrounded him, muscles tense, eyes calculating every movement. None of them dared to strike yet. They were watching, sensing, studying. But Askeladd had no interest in waiting. He attacked. He moved like a living shadow across the field. In one instant, he was floating, and in the next, he had plunged his black daggers into Ethan's lungs with cruel precision. The pain was so intense that Ethan didn't even scream. Askeladd followed with a vicious kick, launching his body like a projectile. Ethan flew across the square and slammed violently against an obsidian wall. The sound of the impact echoed like dry thunder. Caddy screamed his name, her voice filled with desperate fury. She didn't hesitate, and with her the other 39 charged in. The battlefield exploded into motion. They were fast, strong, precise, Every strike was fueled by purpose. Every blow a thirst for justice. Men and women hardened by years of war, trained to kill with their hands, with blades, with pure brutality. And yet, it wasn't enough. Askeladd moved with absurd calm, as if dancing among children trying to reach him. He dodged effortlessly, blocked with his tentacles, and countered with cold efficiency. His expression showed no strain, only twisted delight. With each attempt, the warriors felt they weren't fighting a man, but something beyond flesh, beyond logic. Then Surkr stepped forward. The Draconite was a living wall. His broad, scale-covered body stood tall with imposing presence. He drew in a deep breath, and unleashed a wave of fire so intense it made the air itself tremble. Golden flames engulfed the area around Askeladd. The heat was so intense the other warriors instinctively backed away, shielding their faces. Surkr smiled. For a moment he thought he had won, but only for a moment. In the blink of an eye, one of Askeladd's tentacles slashed through the flames. The black blade on its tip swept through the air and severed Surkr's head without warning. The Draconite's body collapsed with a heavy thud. His head rolled across the ground, eyes still open, staring into nothing. Silence. Then came the low, mocking laugh of Askeladd, echoing across the square like thunder laced with cruelty. 2 down, 38 to go. The warriors froze for a second, not out of fear, but rage, hunger for vengeance. Caddy's eyes burned with fury. She tightened her grip on her blade, her jaw clenched, her body tensed, ready to move. And at that exact moment, across the square, something stirred. Slow, but steady. Ethan, covered in blood, crushed by pain, his chest still torn by the blades, but standing, teeth clenched, eyes blazing. Every inch of his body screamed in agony. The regeneration was slow due to the daggers, but something new pulsed in his veins. An ancient force. A cry rising from deep within, refusing to let him fall. He saw Caddy fighting, saw the warriors holding on, saw Askeladd's arrogant smile. And then he whispered with a hoarse, determined voice, "You're not touching her again." And he took his first step, heavy, painful, but alive. In that moment, every warrior saw him, and as if that single act reignited the flame of revolt, they charged. All of them. Ethan was still walking, staggering through the destroyed square. His legs trembled, his chest heaved, his muscles still healing, but something inside him kept pushing forward. He felt the pain burning like embers beneath his skin, but also, rising through it all, his body was changing, evolving. With every heartbeat, every drop of blood spilled, he was becoming stronger, sharper. But Askeladd didn't even notice him. How could he? The king was relishing the pain he was causing. With a simple gesture, Askeladd grabbed 3 warriors at once with his tentacles and dragged them into the center of the square. They screamed, struck, tried to break free. It was useless. With a grotesque crack and the sickening sound of flesh being crushed, the 3 bodies were slammed together with such force that bones shattered, armor caved in, and all that remained was a twisted, bloody mass. Flesh was no longer recognizable. The shockwave from the impact ripped through the air. Ethan was thrown again, hard, against the ground. Once more, his body trembled from the impact. He tried to rise, but pain yanked him back. And yet, even there, face pressed against the shattered ground, the taste of blood on his tongue, he felt it, the power growing. It was like the supplements inside him were igniting something beyond limits, beyond reason. But pain still held him down. Meanwhile, the massacre continued. One by one, Askeladd fought the warriors, not with rage, not with desperation, but with pleasure. He seemed to savor every soul taken, every ounce of hope crushed. Each movement was clean, precise, merciless, and slowly, they fell. That elite force, the strongest surviving fighters in the galaxy, was now just blood and dust scattered across the square. Only 2 remained, Caddy, and one warrior crouched beside a shattered pillar, eyes frozen with fear. Hope had already abandoned him. Askeladd turned slowly, walking toward the paralyzed man. His smile was calm. Cruel. So this is how it ends? He asked the silence. With empty eyes and bent knees? At that moment, Caddy attacked. Her blade cut through the air, fast and precise, aiming straight for the back of the king's neck. But he blocked it without even looking. Metal clashed, and Askeladd turned to face her. "I wanted you to be more afraid, Caddy," he said, voice cold and disturbingly calm. "But no matter, if you won't beg, you'll die now." With a brutal blow, he struck her. The force launched her into a wall of obsidian with such impact that it cracked. She hit hard. The wall groaned. Caddy lay still for a moment, her eyes blinking slowly, blood trickling from her forehead. Ethan saw it. His body shook. Something snapped inside his mind. Not her. Not now. Never. The supplements inside him exploded. Pain was replaced with pure instinct. Adrenaline turned into raw energy. His body, forced to evolve beyond anything it had ever endured, began shifting into something even he didn't understand. His eyes opened wider. The bleeding stopped. He stood, and even bleeding he looked different, stronger, more lethal. Askeladd, still with his back turned to Ethan, moved toward Caddy with the same satisfied grin. "I was going to leave you for last," he said, his voice oozing with wicked joy. "But if you won't give me despair, I'll just kill you now." Caddy, barely breathing, looked up, and with a sudden, precise motion, she buried her dagger into the king's chest. The blade struck deep, direct hit to the heart. Askeladd froze. Caddy trembled, panting. Maybe, just maybe, she had done it. But then he looked at the dagger and smiled. "A proto-obsidian dagger? Very good, Caddy," he said softly, pulling the blade from his chest like it was a splinter. "You're still as fierce as ever, but now even this is meaningless." Before her eyes, his wound closed. Darkness slithered across his body and healed him in seconds. Victory vanished. He raised his hand. "Time to silence you for good." But before he could strike, a brutal impact struck Askeladd from behind. The hit was so fierce, so pure in its power, it cracked the air itself. Askeladd was launched like a cannonball into an obsidian wall in front of Caddy, and the wall exploded, shattering into pieces as he crashed through it. Caddy dropped to her knees, exhausted, gasping, and looked up at the figure now standing before her. Ethan, still bleeding, still wounded, but stronger than ever. She stared at him, eyes wide with disbelief. What happened to you?" she whispered. Ethan didn't take his eyes off the rubble. "I'll tell you, after I kill him." From within the debris came the sound of shifting stone. Then, laughter. Dark. Askeladd stood once again, his body coated in dust, his eyes still gleaming with the thrill of war. "You think you're capable?" he said, brushing the rubble from his shoulders with calm confidence. And then, they stared at each other. Two forces, strength versus darkness, pain versus power. The end was just beginning. Ethan breathed deeply, his lungs still wounded, but his entire body pulsed with renewed strength. The heat in his blood was nearly unbearable, and the muscles beneath his skin vibrated like tightly drawn wires about to snap. The pain was still there, constant, brutal, but now it was fuel. He took the first step, then the second, and soon he was running. He charged at Askeladd with brutality, each movement driven by a silent fury. His fists became hammers, and his body a projectile aimed at the one who had destroyed everything: Caddy, the fallen warriors, the murdered children. It all came crashing into his mind like an avalanche. Askeladd smiled. His tentacles moved like living blades, reacting instantly. Clang. The black blade slashed through the air and clashed against Ethan's fist, creating a shockwave that shook the rubble around them. Shattered stones lifted off the ground. Caddy had to brace herself against a wall to avoid being pulled in by the force. Askeladd raised an eyebrow, surprised. "Ah," he said, a mocking tone in his voice as he held one of the daggers between two fingers, spinning it like a toy. "Didn't I kill you just a moment ago? How are you still standing?" He tilted his head slightly, as if examining a rare specimen. "And how are you even stronger than before?" Ethan didn't answer. He stepped back, chest heaving like thunder restrained, and lowered his gaze. From the ground he picked up a broken blade, its edge jagged, chipped, but still sharp. Then his eyes met Caddy's. Without a word, she understood and tossed him her proto-obsidian dagger. Ethan caught it midair. Now armed, he locked his eyes on the king. Askeladd's grin widened, his gaze gleaming with curiosity and delight. "Now I see," he muttered, pointing his dagger at Ethan. "You're the earthling who was sold into slavery, aren't you?" He laughed like it was some private joke. "I knew Mayor Eldon would die for underestimating his stock. He was always too greedy to recognize a raw gem. But even so, you're far too strong for your pathetic race." He took a step forward. "I insist. How did you get so powerful, Earthling?" Ethan gripped the proto-obsidian dagger tightly, the metal slightly burning against his skin. "The supplements," he said, his voice dry but steady. "They had an unexpected reaction." Askeladd laughed louder, as if that was the best answer he could have heard. "Unexpected, of course." He glanced up at the starry sky above them, as if already seeing the universe beneath his heel. "Then once I revive Meldagor, I'll destroy Earth." He lowered his eyes back to Ethan. "An army of billions like you would be a problem even for him. Best to cut the root." Ethan remained silent, his gaze locked onto the monster in front of him. He studied him, watched every muscle, every flickering shadow. And then, finally he asked, Why do all this?" Askeladd didn't hesitate. His eyes gleamed with cold, absolute pleasure. "For power." He looked up at the stars again. "I've always been a warlord, a conqueror. But after discovering Meldagor, my desire for control grew into something greater, inhuman." He stepped forward, his tentacles floating around his body like vultures above a corpse. "I approached the empire of the old king, earned his trust, and in the end," Askeladd pointed to Caddy. She lowered her eyes, ashamed. "I married his daughter, Caddy." The world seemed to pause for a second. Ethan turned to her, stunned. "Caddy? Is that true?" She took a moment to answer. Her voice was low, filled with regret. "Yes," she murmured. Back then, I believed he was a good man. I was blind. Ethan took a deep breath. There was no judgment in his face, only understanding. I get it. It's okay. He hesitated. And the dead child? That prince? Was he yours too? Caddy shook her head, eyes welling with tears. No, he was the son of another woman, but I loved him like he was mine. Ethan turned back to Askeladd, now his eyes filled with righteous fury, a kind of rage only those who've lost everything can know. You wanted to sacrifice your own son? What? Askeladd shrugged. It was necessary. The coldness in his voice was enough to make Ethan's blood boil. I also had to kill his mother, he continued with a twisted smile, when the boy was just a newborn. That way Caddy would pity me, and then I only needed to poison her father and take the throne. He spread his arms. With my plan nearly complete, I tried to sacrifice the children. But he glanced at Caddy, she found out, and got in the way. Ethan clenched his jaw, his fingers tightening around the hilt of the blade. You're a monster. I'm a king. Askeladd corrected calmly. I'm going to make you suffer for all of this. Askeladd opened a wide grin and stepped forward. Then come, try me. The battle erupted again, this time with true violence. Ethan charged, broken blade in one hand, proto-obsidian dagger in the other. His strikes now carried weight, speed, and precision. Every blow aimed to kill. Askeladd met him head-on. No more toying. Now he defended seriously. His black blades moved with supernatural grace. Tentacles lashed the air, trying to unbalance Ethan with every step. The impact of each clash was deafening. Every weapon strike shook the ground. The very air between them seemed to vibrate, dense, choking. Even Caddy, still recovering, could feel the pressure in her chest. It was like trying to breathe inside a vacuum. The two moved like forces of nature, chaos against chaos. Ethan with his righteous fury and rising strength. Askeladd with his icy cruelty and unshakable dominance. Strike after strike, blow after blow. Their blades danced, their fists collided, their power echoed. And so, the real battle began. To be continued. If this story kept you hooked until now, just wait until you see what's next. Another journey full of twists, dangers, and discoveries awaits you. So don't stop now. Click on the next video and keep this adventure going.